In 2020, Lily Nova began astrophotography as a hobby during the COVID lockdowns. She began taking photos and video of different UFOs that she was witnessing. And eventually she began having telepathic communications with the occupants of the UFOs that she found out were from different star systems such as Lyra, Andromeda, and Arcturus. She has since gone on to have many experiences with different extraterrestrials. She's written a best-selling book on contact, and very recently she went for an expedition, an investigation of underground caverns at Rock City in Illinois.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, welcome, Lily, to Exopolitics Today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, I think you have some very fascinating photos and video that you've taken of different UFOs that you've sighted. But let's begin with how you kind of like took up astrophotography. What was it? I know. Why don't you talk a little bit about your background as a dietitian and what made you decide to move from being a dietitian to studying and trying to photograph UFOs and the stars?
Yeah, so it's been a very interesting journey. My life took a very dramatic turn during the beginning of COVID. So I started off as a nutritionist, and I taught nutrition and cooking classes after graduating from college for that. And I was very passionate about that, helping people, and that also kind of sparked my first steps of awakening, realizing kind of the corruption of the food industry and how food impacts the body, all of that. So that was kind of like one pathway that led me a long time ago to starting to kind of questioning things. But, I was happily working as a nutritionist, and then COVID hit, lockdowns hit. There was nothing to do. Everything's closed. So I started going out and shooting space photography. And I fell absolutely in love with it. I have a Nikon DSLR camera that I began using, and I started going out every single night. At the time, some things also happened with my job and shifted, and I ended up quitting my job. And it's basically like my whole life was just kind of turned upside down, and I just spent every single night out under the stars. Now, a couple months into that, I'd never seen a UFO or had never had any kind of strange experience before that I was aware of, that I remembered. And, a couple months into that, I had my first very, very close UFO encounter, very, very close, right outside of my house in around the St. Louis area. And then they just started popping up left and right. So I turned into investigator mode and just started documenting them with my camera, because at first nobody believed me. So, and it's a really paradigm shifting thing, seeing this and realizing that we are not alone, and that these craft that can do unthinkable, unimaginable things are right here. So that's what I set out to do. And that's kind of how the journey started. And it's really escalated to contact and communication with these otherworldly beings, and taken me down a very interesting journey since that. But that was the beginning.
Right. So on November 17, I guess that's the incident you were referring to. That was the first time you saw a UFO or photographed a UFO. And this was something that began reacting to your thoughts. So you want to tell us about that?
Yes, of course. So it was really late. It was about 1:52 in the morning, and I went outside to get some fresh air before I went to sleep. I felt called to going outside, and as soon as I did, I looked up at the stars like I always did, and there was a hovering light that I noticed, a bright light above the neighborhood. Now, this one was a bit further away, but still pretty close, not, high up in the sky, like, satellite distance. This was hovering above the neighborhood, and I investigated it. I realized that it wasn't any of our aircraft. It didn't have any flashing lights, and it was moving in a cliche hovering motion. So I took out my phone and I started filming it because I believed it may be a UFO. Then I got this strange kind of feeling, and an orange, like a blood orange light appeared at the end of my street that drew my attention. As I looked over there, then it almost seemed like time slowed down and things became very eerie and kind of quiet. Like I could hear a pin drop and I could almost feel kind of like an electrical energy. And suddenly I heard this, and I'm the only one around. It's the middle of the night. Suddenly I heard the wind rustling and I turned back and I see this large diamond-shaped craft that it appeared like it came out of nowhere, out of thin air. And that's a depiction of it, a diamond craft. It had a row of red lights and blue-green lights. And I was bending my neck looking up at it. It was pretty close, a few houses down. And it just kind of stunned me. And I was questioning what I was seeing. And it reacted to my thoughts and went up, down, side to side very, very quickly. And then to show me, that I'm not a normal craft, because our craft can't do that we're aware of. Then it started coming straight towards me, and it ended up vanishing above my head. And that was my first experience. And I would have about 14 other encounters in January after that.
Very interesting. I know these diamond-shaped craft, various people have seen them. There's a very famous UFO incident called the Cash Landrum case. I think that was from 1980, where a family saw one of these diamond-shaped craft flying in Texas, and it was being accompanied or followed by a number of helicopters, and they suffered radiation poisoning. But that seemed to be more of I don't know, maybe a kind of a craft that was being tested by the military. But what you experienced sounds like it was more of an extraterrestrial craft.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it was definitely extraterrestrial. And that's a kind of a depiction of it, not exactly what it looked like, but pretty close.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So that's the diamond-shaped one. Now, you also saw and photographed in January 2020 another UFO. So this is an actual photograph.
Yes.
So this is not an illustration. So this is a photograph. So this kind of substantiates that you're seeing things and having experiences.
Yeah. So, and this was my second encounter. So at the time, I was spending a lot of time out by myself in very rural areas with my camera, shooting, Milky Way photography, all of that. And I was at this astronomy park surrounded by cornfields. And again, around the exact same time, I started feeling the sensation like I was not alone. And I look and I see a hovering craft above the tree line to my right. I see another hovering craft to my left, hovering above the tree line, 2 craft behind me. And then in front of me, there were these lights, which you're seeing on the screen right here, that were not there a second ago. So suddenly I was surrounded by these craft. And I was completely alone. My car wasn't on, and I was sitting in my car. I was kind of, at the time, scared to start my car and leave. So I decided to go into investigator mode, and I just started filming them. And this, what you're seeing in front, and I have a video of it too. I don't know if you have that handy, but this craft that I was filming, it actually emitted a beam of light. So this is a still shot of that beam of light coming from it.
You communicate at all with the occupants of that craft? Was that happening at this point?
It's not outwardly. I was getting feelings, and looking back, I was experiencing kind of an expansion of consciousness and a deep call to, most people I think would be afraid by this. But I was very curious, and I felt very called, like I wanted to know more. Who are these beings? So I feel like they were calling me and communicating, but not like verbally. It was more of kind of like a feeling. And I do feel like they were activating me. And in one of my pictures, I noticed this later, there was actually like like clouds going from the ground up into the sky that looked like a twisting DNA. What I discovered whenever more of a telepathic, more of a verbal communication began developing, that they were helping to activate my DNA and helping to activate my extrasensory perception and raise my frequency, preparing me for more of a outward communication. So that started shortly after. At first, it was very much about me documenting the physical evidence, and they were kind of leading me down this trail and kind of easing me into it, but quickly easing me into it.
Definitely, it does sound like there was a logical progression in the experiences that you were having. And I mean, it's fabulous that you have been able to take photos and video of these craft that later on you're having full-blown telepathic communications and even kind of like contact experiences with them, but we'll get to that. So I guess at some point, I mean, your professional background was as a dietitian. That's something you got a university degree in that, so you worked in that field. But these contact experiences or these UFOs that you were photographing and responding to you, that seemed to be something you became passionate about. And yes, so you want to tell us about how your kind of interests and passions shifted from the kind of more mundane professional dietitian work to like just going out there studying UFOs and consciousness.
Right. Yeah. So I've actually always been very interested in like how the brain works. I was actually beginning to study the science of consciousness right before my contact experiences started. So I think that was really helping to lay the foundation for me to be able to understand. I've always been kind of a truth seeker in personal development. So that's always been there for me. It just really ramped up, and I think that helped lay the foundation. I've always felt I went into health and nutrition because I wanted to fuel and start a revolution on the planet. Was my goal to help eliminate disease, because I lost my father to a heart attack and heart disease, years before that, and that really impacted me. So it fueled my passion for wanting to help people. So that was originally my passion, and then once these UFOs started to show up, I'm like, oh my God, everybody needs to know this. This is the biggest thing in modern human history. So I knew that I had kind of a responsibility to document what I was seeing and expose the truth. So I just instantly went into full investigator mode and became completely passionate about it. It was a bit of a confusing time for me because I had worked so hard to pursue this dream and goal of nutrition and health and mental health and all of that. And suddenly I was being rapidly pulled to this other venue that's a bit kind of taboo. And, a lot of people thought that I was crazy for it, but I just felt a burning desire in my heart that this was the biggest thing. So now I'm helping fuel a revolution in a different way than I expected, essentially.
Yeah, well, I totally relate to your experience. I went through something similar myself in 2001 when, I was a full-time university professor teaching international peace and conflict resolution. And that was a field that, I was very passionate about and committed to. And then once I saw this Disclosure Project press conference, it was like a light went on inside of me, and I just became very focused on UFOs and the cover up, and just didn't want to go back to what I was doing before, and just became totally focused on that. And that hasn't changed over the last 23 years.
Wow, that's incredible. And isn't it interesting that, ultimately this is all being divinely orchestrated, I believe, in what I've come to find. But it's really interesting how even before our mission, our UFO or disclosure mission was kind of turned on or activated, you could say, we've already been this path has been being paved throughout our entire lives, just by you studying peace and conflict and teaching that. It still pertains and sets you up for what you're doing now. It relates to it.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. I mean, just as you know, diet and health are very important in this kind of field, and the information we get from UFOs from different extraterrestrial groups that directly relates to these professional careers that we were pursuing. And yeah, so it all makes sense in the big picture. But at the
Right.
time, I mean, I think you went through this, as did I. It's very difficult to make that transition from a salaried position to kind of like doing this ufology or exopolitics, as I called it, and somehow making that your bread and butter. That is a really challenging and difficult transition. It took me a long time to be able to do that successfully, and it really was life on the bleeding edge. So what was it? It sounds like you went through something similar yourself.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a year I was unemployed. I was, and I'm never unemployed. I've always been a very hard worker. I was unemployed for at least a year, going through what I call starseed boot camp. Whenever I discovered that, I was a starseed, and I began this communication, and basically these beings trained me every day, and I really had to kind of surrender to the process. It was very confusing and difficult for my identity, because things weren't what I thought they were, and I wasn't who I thought I was. So, and then also the financial part. I mean, I was living off of credit cards, you know, trying to figure out, what is this new path? But it was all divinely orchestrated, and I feel I was divinely guided, as we all are on this mission, and we're taken care of. But I agree, it's definitely a very difficult transition.
Yeah, it is. Now, I've read about 2/3 of your book, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But in there, I read the part where you began making contact, or the ETs began communicating with you, and you had this. Yeah, so you want to describe what happened, and the significance of this kind of Michelangelo picture of God and Adam?
Yeah, it's so poetic. I love it. I love it. It's so poetic, symbolic. So I was not in the UFO community. I was not in the starseed community. I was kind of had some spiritual aspects to me, but not just nowhere where I am today. I didn't have anybody who was going through any of these experiences. So these UFOs started bombarding me. They were popping up everywhere, left and right. And I'm like, they're obviously trying to tell me something. And so I just started talking to them. I'm like, I don't know if you guys can hear me, but what do you want me to do? Do you want me to share this footage? Because they seem to be popping up literally in front of my camera. I would actually accidentally catch them on camera sometime in the background. And so I said, why are you showing up? And it was also causing strain in my life, because it's hard trying to explain that to people and nobody believing you. So yeah, I was sitting at my desk one day and I said, what do you want from me? And there was this postcard right there. I got it from Italy. That's an actual picture of the postcard. It came off of my wall and flung at my feet. And I picked it up, and in my mind, I heard contact. They wanted to make direct contact with me. That's why I was seeing all of these UFOs all of a sudden. And then more of a communication began to ensue after that.
The next significant development was this golden orb that you saw, and also a blue alien woman from Lyra or Andromeda that you saw. So you want to tell us about the golden orb and how you were able to connect with the operator of that.
Yeah, so this actually happened with another person present, which was nice, because the majority of all my experiences leading up to that, it was just me. I went out with this other person who had UFO experiences before and was open to this. So they were a frequency match. We were a frequency match, I discovered later, to be able to have this experience. We were open-minded and a frequency match. So we went out with the intention to make contact, and within 5 minutes, this golden orb appears, which is what it allowed me to take pictures. I even asked, can I take photos of you? And it stayed, and I got about 10 pictures of it, so this is one of them. And at the time, this was in the very beginning of communication, I'm starting to ask it questions, and it's kind of moving around like it's answering. And then my new friend, said, why don't we try and close our eyes and see if we can get any information that way? And at the time, I thought that kind of sounded kind of strange, but I did so. And whenever I closed my eyes, I began receiving visions, which I had never seen before. I saw like this a head with a bunch of light going into the top of the head, which now I know was depicting a download or being downloaded with information. And then I was able to remote view essentially the beings who were controlling this craft, this golden orb. And it was a light blue woman with no hair. She looked very human, and she had a silver skin tight uniform on. And then she had about 5 crew members that were standing behind her with the same uniform. And so that was my first time getting to see what these beings looked like who were reaching out to me. So that was, a very, very pivotal moment. I first learned that she said they originated from Lyra. And then I later discovered that they were she's Andromedan. So Andromeda Constellation, originally from Lyra, I believe Vega before that.
About the Andromeda Council, because I think that's relevant to that woman and the crew members, that somehow they were connected to that Andromeda Council. So, how did you learn about the Andromeda Council? When was the first time you heard about it?
Oh, it's been it took a little while, I think, for me to kind of come across more of that and learn more about that, because all of that was very, very new to me. So I know that they are, they're a council that comes from the Andromeda Constellation, and they're very like psychic beings, from my understanding. So this particular being really showed up and guided me, and that's all through what my first book discusses. She was training me on like personal development and kind of activating my DNA and psychic development. She kind of became like a trainer to me. But then, so she was my main mentor, and her name's Talia. I would hear her in my head with me every single day after this, telepathically, like from morning till I went to bed, just being trained on doing certain like meditations, activations, eating like a clean diet, helping me to become a clear a vessel, healing, things like that. Remote viewing. She taught me about remote viewing. She would show me, she taught me about DNA and DNA activation, helping me to activate my DNA and psychic abilities and things like that. So I still have contact with her. But I also began seeing other beings. So this specific being, Talia, I believe that she's a very busy person. I don't think she doesn't like hang out on kind of like a certain planet or a certain like Andromedan Council world. She's very diplomatic and bounces around a lot. I see her a lot with Pleiadians and Arcturians. Specifically. So then I started seeing all of these other groups too, but she was kind of like my main mentor in Star Family.
So can you just explain how she taught you to remote view?
Yeah. So they instructed me to begin meditating. And she first had me do, well, first she said your heart chakra needs some work. She instructed me to work on opening the heart center, because that's the key. It helps you the third eye is great for that as well, but really the heart is the key. Raising your frequency allows you, so these beings they're higher vibrational. So she was teaching me to raise my frequency and then they kind of lower their frequency to meet you for a clear communication and for you to be able to have these interactions. So she was teaching me about frequency, how to raise your frequency, eliminating kind of like negative patterns, healing old wounds that kind of keep you in a lower frequency, working with the chakras that raise your frequency. So she had me do a lot of meditations on that. And then after I started off with that, then we focused a lot on the third eye. So she would have me listen to certain frequency music. I would listen to 963 hertz, which stimulates the crown chakra. She would have me focus on the crown, which connects you to the higher realms. That's where the downloads come in. That's where the information, think of consciousness like a computer, and you're downloading a zip file and that helps you access this quantum field of information in these records all around you. So she would have me listen to frequency music and focus my intention on that. And she started showing me kind of different parts in time. And she said, you can view any part in time. It doesn't matter because everything is happening all at once. So she kind of guided me and practiced with me, showing me just different points in time. An example being Cahokia Mounds, which is in Illinois, but it's near St. Louis, Missouri, where I live. It's a very, very ancient Native American site with the main mound is actually bigger. The base of it is bigger than the Great Pyramid. It's a very sacred site. And I believe there is like a Stargate or in some sort of a base. She showed me that there's some sort of a base under that area as well. But she showed me the Andromedans and the Pleiadians there with the Native Americans, kind of like teaching them like agriculture and just kind of like overseeing and helping them to create this biggest, it's actually the biggest and oldest city in the whole continent of North America, Cahokia Mounds. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. But so that's an example of things that she showed me. And then I just started practicing it with my intention. And I mean, I would meditate for months there. That was all I was doing all day, was meditating for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. So that's kind of a brief summary of how we did it.
Right. Well, that'll become very relevant when we start talking about Rock City. But before we get there, there's still a few more UFO photos I wanted to kind of just go over. This, the first one is the Lakeside Park UFO, and we have two photos to show, and one is of the time-lapse photo you took. So you want to tell us about that, and then we'll go to the close-up.
Yep. Yeah. So especially in the beginning of the journey, and this is before I was public on YouTube about this, they're teaching me a lot about making contact, how to make contact, how to communicate, how to develop telepathy, and these other things. So what I would do is I had an agreement with them where I would meet them each day and film footage of them. It was very much about the footage in the beginning. And so I set up a time lapse on my camera, which was taking a photo every second. And then I walked in front of it. So you can see me walking in the left. And out of these photos, and I could feel them there. Out of these photos, just for 1 second, these two triangle craft kind of blipped in. So they basically just kind of posed for the camera for me, but they were only in one photo out of that whole time lapse. So anything else you would see it traveling across the sky. This was just blip in and out for a second. I believe they cloaked, uncloaked, or popped into the dimension, popped out of the dimension very quickly. And it appears to be kind of like a portal opening up or a tear in space-time from what it looks like too. So it's pretty interesting. And just, these two black triangle craft.
So with these two black triangle craft, so at that point, you were just feeling that these were extraterrestrials? I mean, you didn't get any communication, did you? Or so, yeah. What happened there?
Well, I mean, I was talking to them all of the time, and it was a lot of kind of like feelings too. This was in the early stages too, so I could feel them around whenever my ears were ringing, or I would feel certain sensations, and I would ask them, and they said, yeah, we'll show up for you. At that time, I didn't see them with my eyes, but what I learned to do is I would use the camera to see them, because the camera actually captures a lot more light than our eyes do, and it can capture a lot of things on that we can't actually see. So I was kind of looking in that general direction, but I felt them there, and yes, they were like, yes, we'll show up on camera for you. And then immediately after, I would go check my camera, and I saw that. So that's kind of how we would do it a lot of the time too. And this was in a public space. So sometimes they would have to kind of blip in and out really quickly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So now we have the second set of images from the Lakeside Park UFO. I assume that's in Missouri.
Yep.
Okay, so there you are again, and again you're summoning the UFOs, you're communicating with them. So you want to tell us about that, and then there's a close-up and digitally enhanced version, and so you
Mhm.
want to tell us what was
Yeah, sure.
happening here.
So this is a similar situation. I set up the time lapse and I asked them to appear, to which they agreed. And so I sat there and I began kind of just like meditating, focusing my intention on that. And again, I can feel them. And they actually appeared. I went back and I checked the camera, and they appeared in 3 different photos, and they looked different in each photo. So this is one of them. Yeah, it doesn't look like any craft that I'm aware of. But the first picture was interesting. I didn't send that one to you guys, but it was kind of like this blob. And then I've got another one. This is the best one, I think, the clearest, and it kind of looks like an orange window or some sort of thing going on. And then in the other photo, it looks different also. It's kind of like this craft was kind of morphing, which is interesting. So that there it looks a little bit different. But that's how it looked in one of the other photos. And this is 3 consecutive photos. So time lapse, taking a picture every second, every other second. So it was like changing rapidly, and it showed up in 3 of the photos and then blipped back out. And that one, somebody from MUFON actually enhanced that one from the previous photo that you guys just showed, just kind of like a depiction. So that's kind of like an enhanced version.
Okay, so the first 3 photos in this sequence were taken by your camera after you summoned the UFO, and there's some communication happening. So
Yes.
so that's that's corroboration for your experiences, for your communications.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, the first part of my journey was very much about capturing the evidence. And that was important for me too, to know that what I am experiencing is really happening, to have photographic and video proof of these things happening, and also to show that to, at the time I was like posting it on TikTok and stuff, and it was, I had some journalists reach out to me, and it was shared on Lad Bible and the Mirror, and kind of went viral on all different sorts of websites and things. That article did. So that was important for kind of the beginning stages of the awakening and disclosure. People want to see the proof. They want to see the evidence. And since that, it's become a little bit more, yes, I do get them on camera sometimes, but it's a little bit less about that and more about kind of like information type situations.
Yeah, that's very important. So you've got the evidence, you've got the photos, you've got the videos that shows that you are able to summon the craft, and they come and you have communications with them and you get downloads. So now it becomes more about the information you're getting, and you talked about in your book some very interesting meetings or encounters you had with different celestial beings. You talked about meeting with Jesus, and so what was the message he gave you concerning his information and his alleged returning? In what way is what is this kind of return all about?
Yeah, that caught me off guard. I'm not a religious person. I didn't grow up a religious person, so I didn't know if Jesus was real, if he existed. I didn't really know what I thought about that. As I began meditating, I began having encounters with all sorts of beings, and I started seeing angels. Oh wow, angelic beings are real. ETs are real. It was very galactic at first, and then I started seeing kind of these other things. And one day I was visited by Jesus. And I've seen him, quite a few times since then, but this was very, very profound. And what he said to me was, first, well, he's real. And then he told me that Christ consciousness, the return of Christ, Jesus wasn't going to be coming back to earth like a lot of kind of like the religious doctrines believe, like he's coming back to earth physically. He said the return is of Christ consciousness within all of you, is what he shared with me. So it's us activating and embodying this Christ consciousness. That is the return. And that's this big thing that's happening. So there's actually a lot of parallels. I haven't read the Bible, but a lot of parallels mixed in with, corruption and things that have kind of like left certain things out. But it really is kind of like a biblical times that we're going through, where we're experiencing this grand awakening and return of Christ consciousness. The other thing he said was the kingdom of heaven. Heaven is not this external place, because that's been this whole thing. Everybody argues, not everybody, but the very religious, the church. You have to do this to get into heaven. Don't do this or you'll go to hell. So he enlightened me on the subject, and he said that the kingdom of heaven is actually within you. It's more of a state of being. And we will be bringing heaven down to earth, essentially, as we ascend into these higher levels of consciousness, or Christ consciousness.
I think that's very important that you were able to get that information, because I think a lot of religions talk about their kind of like avatar coming back and somehow saving them, because that, in a way, is contrary to what a lot of extraterrestrials teach, which is that, no, you have within you everything you need to save yourself. And so this return of Christ consciousness is all about being able to connect with that inner part of ourselves that is where everything we need to save ourselves, enlighten ourselves, is there.
Yes, exactly. It's all within you. It was a very empowering message. And also, the heart is the key, I believe, that that love, that unity, that peace. And we have so much untapped potential that we have been completely unaware of. And it's already within us. It's all
right.
we need.
Exactly. And it sounds like that's what you've been trained by these different extraterrestrials to connect with. So there was another being that you connected with, which I thought was very interesting, and that is Thoth. And he was apparently the king of Atlantis. So you want to tell us what you learned about Thoth and his role with Atlantis?
Yeah, he's a very interesting one. So I was first doing, again, this is in the beginning of my journey, and I'm starting to meet all of these other beings. I was meditating. I believe I was doing an Akashic Records meditation. At the time, I didn't even really understand what the Akashic Records was. And I saw this being, and he came to me in the typical ibis form, half ibis, half man. And I realized, like, I recognize him from ancient Egypt, but I didn't know much about him. And he informed me that I was from Atlantis. And then he kind of took me through this journey where we were going over the ocean. And then I saw this grand city that looked very, very advanced. And so he told me that I was from Atlantis, and that was a big part of my history as well as our history. So these beings started to show up to teach me basically our true history. And so he was like a high priest king in Atlantis, but Atlantis began, it very much parallels what's happening now with the corruption, and I believe the infiltration of negative AI is I've come to understand that and become aware of that a little bit more recently over the last year or so. And a lot of just corruption and darkness started to take over. Something happened with the grid. Maybe a pole shift, but I see the grid being blown out, and then basically the plug was pulled on Atlantis, and Atlantis and Lemuria fell. Millions of people died. You've got the flood that's in the Bible and all of that, and some people survived by going to inner Earth. The Lemurians and some of the Atlanteans. And then Thoth went and apparently, from my understanding and what I've seen in communication with him, went and helped to was tasked with restarting civilization with like ancient Egypt and things like that. So, and like the Hermetic principles, you hear about that, the Emerald tablets. So he's shown up to me kind of as a guide, and I see him not all the time, but fairly frequently. He pops in here and there. And recommends that I read those things and study those materials.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are these white lion beings from Sirius, and you've had some encounter with them, and they've shared some information. So you want to tell us about those beings?
Yeah, so that was the first feline being that I saw. It was a white lion being from Sirius. And the messages that they really gave me, it was more of an activation. They showed up. They appeared to activate something within me. So we have this mixture of all of these different ET races within our DNA. So what began happening through this training is I would see these different beings in different star families of mine who appeared to activate different parts of my DNA, if that makes sense. And that would kind of help open me up and activate different gifts and abilities. So we have Lyran DNA, we have Pleiadian DNA, we have Andromedan DNA, we have all of this different DNA, Sirian DNA. So it was really an activation and upgrade is what I was experiencing. And then I learned more about our ancient history with the Lyrans and the Lyran Wars and all of that. And I have had past incarnations with the Lyran Wars, and that's where, the negative reptilians came in and attacked Lyra. I had a spontaneous past life regression one night, just randomly on a Christmas Eve, where I was suddenly downloaded with all of the emotions and memories of these explosions and being attacked by these negative reptilians, and feeling, just devastated. Millions of beings lost their lives, and then these Lyrans, the ones who were able to escape, had to flee and go to these different star systems, and they probably evolved into different races and evolved in different ways, depending on where they moved. But I feel that feud has been going on for millions of years, and I hope that Earth, what we are doing here, and by kind of like melding all of these different genetics, it's a unique opportunity to have peace, to kind of heal all of those old traumas and create something new, and hopefully establish peace between all of these different races.
That's very interesting. I actually had an experience with a white line being myself. I did a course with the Monroe Institute. It's called Star Lines, and in that course they teach us to do the out-of-body experience and explore different star systems and galaxies and so forth. But I did encounter a line being in Sirius, and this line being just kind of popped into my consciousness and gave me a very simple message. It was just 3 words, but it's stuck with me ever since. It's just unified planetary consciousness. And it was like, oh, okay, so that's the mission. Help bring about a unified planetary consciousness, just as you're saying, where all the species on Earth come together.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's exactly it. Unity. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Exactly.
I love that. Yeah.
There's now the Ashtar Galactic Command. As I recall, watching one of your interviews, I thought you talked a little bit about that. So, what do you know of the Ashtar Galactic Command?
So I know they are like a positive military group, I believe, of Syrian descent. But whenever I see them, they kind of look more not Pleiadian, but blonde hair, the ones that I've seen. And I've had encounters with them kind of sporadically, not like full on detailed sessions with them, but I remember one of my first encounters, I actually saw a ship of theirs first. This was Thanksgiving about 3 years ago, I believe. I went outside, set the intention to make contact, asked, them to appear, and I saw a ship, and then I tuned in telepathically and asked them who they were. And this ship was there for about a minute, and then it just blipped out. And they said that they were Ashtar Galactic Command, and that I had a connection with them. Now, I don't know all of the details of that connection, but I do feel a connection with them, and sometimes I see them pop up. One of the recent messages that I received, and it was kind of my first time seeing about them in a little while, I saw them, a fleet of theirs, approaching Earth and dismantling some of these satellites around the Earth that seem to be artificially stimulating parasites and kind of attacking us with frequencies. And I saw that at some point in the last week. And it was specifically the Ashtar Galactic Command, what I saw, who is coming to help dismantle those.
And what do you know of, or what connection have you had with the Galactic Federation of Worlds?
So I would see a lot of Pleiadian beings who are connected with the Galactic Federation. I've also had contact with the Alliance and in Talia, the light blue Andromedan. Like I said, she's very diplomatic. She seems to be friends with all of these groups and kind of bounces around. So I kind of have like a variety of different beings that kind of pop in and will give messages and that I've seen. And more recently, the Galactic Federation of Worlds has been coming up a lot more and giving some messages, I think, because of the pivotal space that we are in right now with, the election going on and all of these things happening, all these major events, disclosure events. So they've been popping up more. And I've been seeing this commander. I'll just call him Commander Z. It's a Pleiadian with he has very, very short blonde hair. That's part of the Galactic Federation of Worlds, a male Pleiadian. I've been seeing him for a couple of years now, and so he's been showing up more recently over the past month, especially. And he gave me some messages about part of like my mission and my connection and personal connections with these different groups, and also some disclosure and some kind of predictions or things that are happening behind the scenes that they were filling me in on. Like whenever I had a meeting with them, that's whenever I saw the Ashtar. Well, that was kind of with the Alliance too, and some of these inner Earth beings that I'm in contact with. But part of that was seeing them coming and dismantling some of these satellites.
Now, you mentioned the Alliance a couple of times. So are we talking about the Earth Alliance? I mean, who are they and what do you know of them?
Yeah, the Earth Alliance. I see, some of this I'm still learning about, but I've been seeing them for the past year or so, and we'll kind of get messages about them. I saw them a lot in my recent trip to Mount Shasta too. There was a meeting happening in Mount Shasta, and whenever I went, it was actually right after I went to California. The next day was the assassination attempt on Trump. And the next day I went up to Shasta and I saw the craziest activity on the mountain. And whenever I tuned in, it was an Alliance meeting happening there, but also interplanetary meeting, like all different beings from all over the place, probably Federation of Worlds. But the Alliance was coming through very strong there. And they were having a meeting, and I kind of remote viewed it. I saw basically like council meetings happening, all of these different beings from all over the place. And so I connected with them to make contact. And what they said is that they were assessing the consciousness of the planet and the impact that had and kind of the timeline that we were on. So that was the Alliance. The Alliance was involved in that. Talia, my Andromedan star family in contact, is working with the Alliance, and I see some, Pleiadians and Arcturian beings that are kind of working with that too. But it seems to be a very diplomatic, but also working with positive humans too, I feel. They're all in collaboration, kind of like a white hat alliance, if you will, working to help bring disclosure and help shift us and anchor in a highest positive timeline, is my understanding of it.
Right. So now we get to this place that I'd never heard of, Rock City, Illinois, which is apparently some underground base is established there. So, tell us why did you choose to investigate Rock City and what you expected to find and what you did find?
Yeah, so this place ended up being very, very interesting. I got a lot of very interesting information here. So Tyler Koala from Journey to Truth podcast, he lives not too far from me. And so he discovered these places and in this area. So it's in Illinois, but close to Missouri. And me and Tyler are both in St. Louis, Missouri. This area is known for massive underground caverns and caves. All of these things are going on, and you don't really hear about this area much. And I really feel that that's by design. I think there's a lot hidden here right under your nose. And this area was kind of just off the beaten path. It's surrounded by cornfields. There's no big town nearby, and it's really kind of like hidden. But once you drive up to it, it's like this these caverns, and it's the National Archives and Records Administration. So there's a lot of government documents hidden here. And so Tyler invited me to go check it out. And so we went in, and I do have some footage of the outside. Yeah, the sign. So National Archives and Records Administration. And we just wanted to go feel it out and see what came up. And I did a remote viewing there. So there's one of the signs. And there's also some space. And Tyler knows a bit more about this and all of these areas. He's done a really good job at investigating and finding a lot of these areas. But I love going out on the field just to see, really what's going on and kind of what's right under our nose that people don't know about. But they offer some space for sale in there too. But yeah, so there's a sign, Rock City Parkway. And then I think the next one might be the National Archives and Records Administration. So me and Tyler actually drove in through these tunnels. We, weren't supposed to be there, but we just kind of drove in and explored it. And the footage is pretty astounding. And then I can also share the information that I was able to receive too.
So you want to show that video, Jazz, of them driving through this underground system there in Rock City, Illinois?
Yeah, it's pretty ominous. I'm just pulling up a message to kind of for what some of the things that I sensed and was able to get messages of afterwards. But so this is us driving through, and this is massive. It goes on. You can get lost in there. We only went in a certain amount because we didn't want to get lost. It was pretty ominous feeling. And so we ended up getting out of the car. And again, this is actually above ground, but I found that there's much more going on beneath the surface. And whenever we went in, I heard telepathically, they know you are here. We'll say the bad guys, the negative. And then we ended up getting out of the car. It was kind of like a triggering space at first because it's just like a very ominous energy. But whenever we got out of the car and I began kind of remote viewing it, I saw a lot of these very, very large spider creatures and experimentation happening with these spider creatures. I was seeing government people on computers under there. I was seeing a person with these pads and wires hooked up to them, like mind control experiments, kind of like some lab settings. And then a Pleiadian appeared, and they said, don't look any further because it's not safe to do so. And I saw a big reptilian eye. So, and they said we were literally right above the belly of the beast, and there was so much going on under the surface than we realized. So that's what I picked up on site. But afterwards, as I was laying down for sleep, I was contacted by the Alliance, by inner Earth beings. And they said, I'll just kind of read from my notes. I wrote it down. First off, they referred to under Rock City as a dungeon. And they said, there's something else down there that you need to be aware of.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.